going to have a discussion on now the topic's going to be on commandments or mitzvahs, and hopefully approach it from two different perspectives.
Yeah.
So, how would you want to open up?
So what comes to mind is actually a question that a student asked me once in our little apartment in Jerusalem. Do you remember that? We had a bunch of guys around the table. And one of them looked at me and he was very much getting used to the whole idea of commandments. And he asked me a very, very foundational, very, very good question that I so appreciated.
Yeah.
And he asked me, what's with all the detail? I mean, I get the belief in God and I get the learning of the Torah and all that, but why is the law, the commandments, driving me nuts every 5 minutes? I have to think about something else. Who cares how I wash my hands before I eat bread? Who cares?
The question came on the specifics.
Like, what's with all this obsession with detail? Who cares how I wash my hands? Who cares what I do after I eat? Who cares how I go to sleep at night? Who cares how I put on my shoes? I mean, for goodness sake, you know?
Okay.
And, you know, coming from a religious standpoint, I tried to put myself behind his eyes and why, who cares? If you're thinking the right thoughts and you're believing the right beliefs, then honestly, God cares which type of ice cream you eat. Like, come on, you know?
Okay.
It just seems very petty. Right? You have anything to say about that so far?
No, I hear that.
Your face is like my mind is exploding with ideas to say.
No, I hear the question. So, I don't actually remember the incident, but...
I did. You were having another heavily philosophical conversation on the other side of the table. So, thank God what I said resonated with him. Now, I would now bring the whole, you know, from in to out, from out to in. But what I told him, which I think is maybe a good idea how to start this discussion, is love notes.
Love notes.
Love notes. So if you have a relationship with someone and you have a loving, deep, internal, unconditional relationship with someone, imagine like two lovers, right? They write each other love notes because the one time a week or even the one time a day is not enough when they want to meet. It's the details that counts. It's the little note when the wife opens up her lunchbox at work and finds a little sticky note on the box. Just a little love note. When the husband opens up his gym bag and finds a little note with a chocolate tucked into his sneakers. It's not about the big anniversary gift that cost $1,000. It's about the guy's favorite juice when they're going out that she bought that morning.
So I suppose the constant connection you're driving at?
Yes, and also the details. It's about the details. When I remember the flavored chewing gum you like, that means more than me spending $500 and buying you this and this watch. And you're like, okay, so you spend money instead of owning up to a relationship. You can always exchange relationship for money. I could buy you a Ferrari. That doesn't mean I know you. If I buy you your chewing gum, I know you.
Okay, now the parallel this in this idea of Jewish commandments.
Okay, so the Jewish commandments is that if we shift it. If we were to, let's say, only once a week or whatever it is, be like, you know, hallelujah, like God and everything. Okay, cool. But what we're trying to do is have an actual relationship, not something that is a flag. We're actually trying to bring it into our home. And help me flesh this out. If we're trying to have a relationship with God, it's supposed to be a loving relationship. In the whole dynamic, okay, we're not going to go into the whole male-female dynamic here, but God being the male, we being the female.
So so I suppose
there is a relationship going on here.
The constant having God in your mind, or this idea of a relationship in your mind, it permeating your day in specific, and the more specific I suppose would fit into the deeper the relationship would be.
Yes, And also, you have to. This ties a little bit into something that I do with my clients and do coaching. So something I'll do, let's say someone will have anxiety.
Yeah.
So amongst other more cognitive things, I'll put them in a relaxed state. They'll imagine a place of pristine beauty of their own choosing, and they're all relaxed. And then we confront their anxiety.
Yeah.
And once they've come to a conclusion in this relaxed state, now that's not so feasible to go into that relaxed state. They're in a stressful situation. Oh, oops, let me start breathing. It doesn't work.
Okay.
However, in their relaxed state, I'll, let's say, tell them to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when they're then after a few times, your brain has created new connections that this means that relaxed state. So a physical action then translates itself instantaneously into, okay, grounding and relaxation. And then in an intense time, they can do that. So during your day with Judaism, you are forcing your mind to constantly think, ooh, how am I going to wash my hands? Right hand first. Oh, right hand first. Why am I doing right hand first? Ah, love note.
Ah, I see.
Ah, how am I, I can have this ice cream. I can't have this. Ooh, why can't I have that? Ooh, connection.
Gotcha.
And it's little and
Okay.
It's instantaneous, and it's every time. It's not the, preparing yourself for 3 days to have this huge, anniversary party. It's love notes.
So I suppose the key thing here would be that desire for a relationship has to be connected to the actions.
Okay, yeah. If you're just, eating your ice cream.
This explanation on what Jewish commandments mean will lose its meaning if the person hasn't psychologically made that connection.
Very much. I think the foundation, 100%. Oh my goodness, you can do all of the right thing and have absolutely no thought whatsoever just because you're doing it by rote, 100%. However, the key word here is relationship. As soon as you are in relationship, I'm not talking about, a lot of people are in relationship with people, but they're not in relationship, as in not in their mind. They're very, very selfish. Happens to be they have a spouse. I'm talking about if your mindset is relationship with a spiritual entity, then what you're doing is like infused with the concept relationship.
Okay.
And then hopefully you'll choose to make connections in your life.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Nice.
So that's what came to my mind. So I told him this, and he's like, huh, okay. Because a lot of the explanations he was getting were very, very mystical and he didn't connect to. This was much more foundational.
All right. So let me put, I suppose, my perspective on the table. One, which I suppose would be one based off symbolism, which is basically that's what's called throughout our life, we always come across different symbols, be it handshake, be it a sign of a police station, whatever it may be. There's symbols that hit us the whole time, and a symbol, and we'll touch upon this in other discussions.
How is a handshake a symbol? When I think of symbol, I think of the English flag.
So a symbol can be,
or peace. This is a symbol.
Right. But for example, what is given over with a handshake? Two people touching hands.
It shows like a commitment.
Well, you could probably write a book on what's being given over by two people touching hands. It's not simply the touching of hands. That's
everything but
equality. It's the dignity given to the other person. If you don't shake hands, the onus of explanation is on you.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to a mitzvah is deeply rooted in the same idea of symbolism. The action that's being done through the commandment, through the idea, is attached to it ethical and moral and goal-orientated messages that once a person, whether a person has to be aware of them or not, I suppose would depend on the psyche.
You choose to be aware of them.
And yeah, exactly. And the idea would be that what is based off this symbolic representation gives over an idea, then practicing that out in your being leads to that psychological commitment, which will then lead to a different mode of being.
Because it gives you meaning. It's not just because.
Right. If people can anything can do anything just because, but once you are aware of the meaning, the action becomes infinitely more meaningful. For example,
it's also an anchor.
So I suppose what you were saying was that you would have the action, and then you would have the understanding of what's being done by the action equals relationship, or as you called it, love note.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that the action, once the explanation about how the action leads to a certain leads a person in a certain psychological direction, keep doing the action, that anchor brings a person towards that psychological direction and that psychological commitment. By way of example.
Okay, so we're saying the same thing, but for me, I'm stopping by relationship, and you're stopping by become a better person, are aware of different lessons for life, etc. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. But by way of a concrete example, the classic example is the idea that Jewish people sanctify the moon. Now, when a person looks up at the moon, they see a celestial body. But when a Jewish person looks at the moon, from a biblical perspective, the moon was described as a sign for the Jewish people. In a weird way, the mascot of the Jewish people.
Yeah.
Now, when people look up at the moon, when people look up at the moon renews itself.
Yeah.
As I touched upon in another video, the idea being that the moon waxes and wanes, goes from nothing to something. Now, that is the key and most essential message of living a Jewish life.
Kind of works with your previous video about something from nothing for Shabbos.
Well,
that we have the opportunity to recreate ourselves.
That's a constant theme that replays
free
itself.
Choice, yeah.
The idea being that this is our mascot. Why is this our mascot? Because the moon waxes and wanes, or the moon reflects the light of the sun. And once a month, you should renew reflecting that light, being the light, the moral light. The idea that you should become a better person. The idea that you should have the ability to say that, like the moon dies and renews, so too I can die and renew. Now, this isn't a scientific claim. This is a moral claim.
Okay, but the sun being God, or the sun being what?
Well, I suppose the sun, in this metaphor, I suppose the sun would be God. The ideal, not
just
God.
Divine light.
More, I suppose the idea
Perfection.
Being, striving towards that which is best. The moon reflects the light of the sun, so too you should reflect that light, or whatever you want to call it. This idea of working towards perfection, working towards yesterday not necessitating today.
You know what I like that also? It's because the moon doesn't have light of itself. So what you're saying is that even though the moon like waxes and wanes, it's reflecting the bigger light. Like when emulating the bigger light. So when we are behaving the way we ideally would like to, it's not our goodness. It's our goodness reflecting a divine goodness. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
No.
It's not that we created this good and we could. If every person was the ultimate, their own creator of goodness, then we could change it according to what we think is good at the time, right? But if we are reflecting an ultimate good, that means there is an ultimate set of goodness, an ultimate what is good and what is bad, and by us choosing to be good, we're reflecting that.
That's quite profound.
Do you know what I mean? It's not flexible in terms of I am the sun, so if I choose to shine this way.
It touches on the objectivity of morality.
That's right.
And it's interesting, whether you look at it from a secular perspective or a religious perspective, what they're called is what's known as a moral realist. Someone who believes that morality or goodness, now this is sort of sidestepping away from, I suppose, Judaism per se, but the idea being that there being an objective moral framework that we are working towards as people. We are striving towards this moral perfection. Be it Jewish or secular, doesn't make a difference. People are striving towards something. Now, I suppose you could extend the metaphor of the moon to include that as well. You are striving towards an objective goodness
that you are trying to reflect,
beautiful.
Not to generate.
So beautiful.
Okay, but I cut you off. You want to continue?
I'll just recap it. The moon is sanctifying the moon is a mitzvah in the Jewish framework. Now, the moon is a symbol. The moon is a symbol of renewal, and that is the ultimate, almost central message of Judaism, that you can make a renewal. Like the moon literally from nothing becomes something, you too can, from nothing, in the moral sphere, become something. Mm-hmm. And I suppose that's shines a light on the idea of mitzvahs, specifically the moon. I know this is a bit of a abstract mitzvah, and something that not everybody comes across in their day-to-day life, but this idea, and maybe we'll touch upon it in other videos, the idea that this symbolic approach of appreciating the mitzvahs hit us in a very meaningful way. When a person looks at the moon now, the moon itself doesn't do anything. The moon is a rock, but once you infuse it with meaning, that waxing and the waning and that rebirth can have an impact on you whenever you see the moon. So you literally once a month, and coming up to Rosh Hashanah, which is one of the high holy days, which is I suppose, the exemplar of this idea.
And again, Jews have a commandment, a mitzvah, to sanctify the moon once a month. They go out and they sanctify the new moon.
Exactly. And that idea reoccurring in your life once a month, that once a month you're told that this month can be different. If last month was good, this month can too be good. But A, everything can always strive for higher. And B, if last month wasn't great, you have an impetus to renew yourself. And that's from a physical object, and that's what symbolism does. So, excellent. Guys, hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any questions or comments,
you can either private message us or you can post it in the comments.
Cheers.
See you.